Hello friends, my name is Marines, and today I'm continuing my look back through everything that I read in 2015 by ranking the romantic pairings. I want to start this video by warning you guys that I am a weird reader when it comes to romantic pairings. I'm not averse to romance at all. In fact, I'm actually kind of squishy. I'm the type of person that if there are feelings to be had, I'm probably going to have them. However, in this specific category, I am extra sensitive to tropes and cliches and abusive relationships and consent issues and etc. It very much bothers me when I come across relationships that are problematic and they are portrayed as romantic. I'm a really big believer in the fact that media shapes and molds culture and opinion, and the messages in media that we consume matter. That was a bit of a tangent, but now we can jump on into the list, starting from my least favorite romantic pairing and working my way up to my favorite. Number 14 is Bella and Edward from Twilight by Stephenie Meyer. I mentioned before that I read Twilight for the very first time this year. It was specifically for a project where I was snarking it chapter by chapter, so I went in knowing that I would not like this book, I would not like this pairing, and my expectations were at a really accurate level, I feel like. So at first, as I was reading, I was like, well, this is bad, but it's not as bad as I imagined it would be. Ho 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 ho. It got worse, and it was just kind of insane to me that as we progress, Bella and Edward are having these conversations, and it's basically the bulk of what this book is. There's like no plot until the last couple of chapters where plot walks out of the forest suddenly, but the bulk of this book is really just them going back and forth about their insta-lovey feelings, and Edward, his constant position is, but what if something bad happens? And he's always very vaguely mentioning this bad thing that could happen. And there's this moment as I'm reading that I just sit back and I think, does everyone realize that he's talking about killing her? That their romantic conversations right now are really centered around the fact that he's worried he's going to bite her and eat her. And she's basically like, no, it's okay. I don't mind if something bad happens. Code for if you kill me. Bella had no sense of self-preservation in the story, and it bothered me so much because it clearly came from a place of low self-esteem. So the author is capitalizing on that in order to bring this pairing together that absolutely just do not belong together. If your conversations about your relationship center around the fact that he wants to kill you, please get out of that relationship. There were constantly these moments where things that Edward did made Bella question her own sanity. Like he breaks into her house and finds her car keys in a pocket in her jeans in some laundry, and so she goes in and nothing is disturbed, but she knows that she left the keys there, but then she thinks, maybe I didn't, and she's literally questioning her own sanity because her boyfriend is a super creep stalker. And then there's the infamous watching you sleep thing, like he watches her sleep, and Bella's reaction is not like, oh my god, you weirdo, no, I did not invite you into my house and give you permission to watch me sleep. It's like, oh my god, did he see me like drool, and did I talk in my sleep? This is so embarrassing. Absolutely one of the worst romantic pairings I've ever read about. Number 13 is Laken and Will from Slammed by Colleen Hoover. This is another couple that I disliked because of who they were as people and because the relationship was also very problematic. We'll start with the fact that I disliked them as a pairing, and that was because they were both whiny little babies that needed to shut up and suck it up. They went on one date and then spend the entire rest of the book whining and complaining and being miserable because they can't be together because of the big like plot thing, the big secret. And I'm just like, really guys? Find other people. They think about sacrificing careers and educational paths and family relationships just because that one date must have been pretty amazing. I can't even remember what the date was. I just remember that they went out one time. Of course, the whole thing is problematic because of who Will is and what his profession is, which is as much as I'll say. He is in a position of power, and to date Laken would be to take advantage of that power, and that seems to bother him for a little bit, but not that much because they're constantly sneaking off into corners and making out and stuff. There were absolutely times when Will took advantage of his position of power in order to manipulate or deal with Laken within the confines of their relationship. Number 11 is Juliet and Adam from Shatter by Tahereh Mafi. Now, on surface level, these two are okay because Adam never treated Juliet in a way that was inappropriate, quite like Edward Cullen and Will from the two previously mentioned books. There is something to be said about the story that contains these two, and the story is a bad one. Also, Adam was really bland, and Juliet, this is the part that got to me though, and I know that it is kind of part of the plot, like it's not totally ignored by the author, but it still made me feel icky about them as a pairing. But Juliet is not really all there. She's not connected to reality. She's very vulnerable emotionally. She's very unstable, and this is how they interact for the whole of this first book. And I've only read the first book. I haven't continued on with the series, but within this book, it's like a really icky pairing for that reason. Number 10 is Meyer and Maven from Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, and really this should be Meyer and the brothers that she love triangles with. This one could get real spoilery as well, so I'll be careful how I say all of this, but Meyer gets brought to the palace after it's discovered that she has powers she's not supposed to have. So they're trying to pass her off as an elite member of society, and part of that is that the king betroths her to his youngest son, the Prince Maven. Of course, she's got some feelings for the other brother Cal, that all I can remember why that develops is because sometimes he stands real close to her and he's hot. That might just be my memory though. That might be accurate though. This book is chock full of flat characters, but the best ones in terms of development are actually the brothers, but only because they have to be complex and morally gray, so you don't know which one to choose. My biggest problem here is just that I wanted Meyer to choose neither of them and to pay some attention to what was actually going on and to make decisions based on those things instead of emotions. Stop making decisions on emotions you've had for a month. Number 9 is Cody and Ben from I Was Here by Gayle Forman, and now saying that out loud, I think that Cody and Ben actually are worse than Meyer and her love thing. This was a 2-star read for me, and a big reason why it flopped is because it focused on Cody and Ben instead of the other stuff that was happening, and it's icky because Ben dated Meg. Ben dated Cody's best friend who committed suicide, so the reason that they got connected in the first place is because Cody figures out that Meg had very strong feelings towards Ben and everything that happened between them. This story treated suicide as a kind of mystery, something that Cody is trying to figure out, which is problematic in and of itself. But then Cody and Ben team up to figure out why Meg committed suicide. Besides the icky setup, we have Cody, who is the virginal girl, and Ben, who is the womanizer, musician, college guy. And I think right now you know exactly what I'm talking about because that is just such a trope, and it wasn't expanded upon or anything in this book. It was just exactly the trope of he feels differently towards her. It's different this time, but she's worried because he's a womanizer and all of that. There's even a let's pretend it never happened scene, which at that point I was just done. Number 8 are Sydney and Mac from Saint Anything by Sarah Dessen. I am putting them here because they are both mostly forgettable. In my review, I said that Mac was a really nice guy and that he treated Sydney really well. I talked about Sydney in my YA heroines video, and I said that she was very bland and forgettable. So they are, as a couple, also pretty forgettable, but just like nice people and you know. Number 7 are Celaena, Sardothian, and Dorian, and then by extension Gayle, who we know is developing feelings for Celaena in that book. So there's that little love triangle thing that is not exactly fully explored in this book, but definitely hinted towards and building. The one positive thing that I managed to say about this book when I finished was that the love triangle wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. There was definitely one character that I leaned towards that I thought was a better character, and the spoilers I have heard for the future of the series are that this one character gets absolutely destroyed. So if there was ever any hope of me continuing with the series, that hope has diminished all the more. For the most part, Dorian just kind of goes around winking at everything that moves, and Gayle like grimaces and growls at everything, but like that's not offensive. That's just bad writing and characterization, which we know is a thing in this book because Celaena Sardothian. Number 6 is Agnieszka and the Dragon from Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This was a hard rank for me because the dragon is a jerk and he treats Agnieszka in not a good way in the beginning of this. I think there are a couple reasons why it didn't completely fail for me, and that was because he changes towards her and also because he's a jerk to everyone. It wasn't that he was specifically a jerk to Agnieszka and he was treating her bad because he liked her or that's the way he treated her within their relationship, but he was literally just prickly to everyone. He was focused on something else. He was really burdened with a responsibility, and so he like didn't have time for people, and that's really the way he treated Agnieszka. He did not have time for her foolishness or for her failures. I'm also ranking them here because there was this really great element of their relationship, and as that they do magic together, and the scenes where they do magic together were so lovely and so vivid, and they painted a really great picture in my mind, and it's something that sticks out to me about this book. I also like the push and pull of these characters and the kind of magic that Agnieszka does versus the kind of magic that the dragon does, which is also a cause of contention between them at the beginning because they don't understand each other. So it's frustrating for both of them, but then as they start to realize what's going on and how they are different, that changes their relationship as well. I also like that Agnieszka at one point walks away from him. She makes her own decisions always. She doesn't let him get to her, and she is always constantly like, no, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm going to do, and she absolutely does it. She does not let him dictate her actions, her behavior, nothing. And I love that about her as a main character, and it really set up their relationship in a big way. And also their relationship is like basically a background item in the story. There's so much going on, which I love. Still, I knocked points off because of those kind of beginning interactions where it was a little jerky and all that. Next, Alexia Terabadi and Lord Macon from Soulless by Gayle Carriger. This book is kind of trashy and I love it. It's ridiculous and funny, and I like that the pairing between them is also kind of trashy and ridiculous but funny. You can tell from the beginning that there is kind of feelings and sexual tension between them, but Alexia especially is oblivious to what is going on, but their interactions are hilarious. It plays on a ton of tropes in this book, and I think if you go into it recognizing that it is a comedy and it is going to play on those tropes and it is going to be a little bit trashy and a little bit ridiculous, that you'll really enjoy this book. And I like that one of the tropes that it plays on is that these two can't keep their hands off of each other, like literally because of the power that she has, and so it ends up becoming like weirdly like sexual in the worst times. Like, this is not the time to be doing it, but she has to touch him because that is part of her power. So it's a really interesting and funny thing that it did, and I ended up liking the sass and the back and forth between these two characters. Alexia is just a pistol. She is something to be reckoned with, and Lord Macon in his own right is a very gruff and strong kind of character, so they balance each other out pretty well. Next, Aristotle and Dante from Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alire Saenz. I love the way that the relationship between these two progresses because we see them from when they meet and when they become friends and how all of that progresses, and I think it very much is a story about each individual and how they grow as people, and then how they finally recognize what was always between the two of them. As a whole, all of the characters in it were really well developed. I think more than anything, they were characters I thought were real. There were people that felt like I could meet in real life, and because of that, the relationship between the two felt real as well. It felt like it developed in a real way. It felt very tangible, if that makes sense. I don't know. I think Aristotle and Dante play off of each other really well because Dante is just such an open and loving person, a very expressive person, and I love Dante so much. He's so full of energy, and then Aristotle is a little bit more reserved. He has trouble communicating his feelings. He has trouble feeling his feelings, and I think Dante brings out such a great side of him. Number 3 is Cress and Thorn from Cress by Marissa Meyer. I did like the beginning of how their relationship was portrayed because I thought that it was very much like Cress having a celebrity crush on Thorn, and it was always played that way. It wasn't very insta-lovey. You could tell that her feelings towards him at the beginning were really superficial. It was like a celebrity crush, and then they spend more time together and things start changing and shifting between them, and I thought that was very interesting. Number 2 is September and Saturday from the Fairyland series by Catherine M. Valente. Even though as we start the series, September and Saturday are very young, Valente does such a wonderful job of growing up these characters and then growing their relationship in the appropriate way. I almost said in a natural way, but that doesn't quite fit because September is a Merit, and a Merit is a creature that can live out of time. So he has come across versions of his past self and his future self, and it's something that September struggles to deal with. We also see that they have to deal with the fact that September is only in Fairyland for very short periods of time, and this becomes a bigger and bigger problem as the series continues because they're getting older and their feelings are developing for each other other, but they're not spending that much time together and they never know when they're going to be together. It is not super romantic. It is a friendship-based thing that is hinted at being more, and you can tell that they have feelings for each other that are a little bit above just a regular friendship, but again, it's very age appropriate and it has really been growing and building, and again, it's all beautifully written because, you know, Fairyland. And so we've reached my favorite pairing of 2015. The way that I built this list is that I just go through my reads, and as I find a pairing, I would kind of come back to my list and put them where they belonged, either above this person or below this person, and build the list that way. So when these two managed to be at the very top and I hadn't put anyone above them, it was a little bit surprising for me, but the more I thought about it, the more I just decided to keep them here because why not? Akiva and Karoo from the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. As I was reading, I wasn't a huge shipper of them. I like them and I like both of their characters, but it wasn't something where I was like, oh, this relationship is everything to me. Now, stepping back and kind of considering everything that they went through, and not only that, but who they were as people and how they treated each other and what was portrayed as romantic, this was just done so well. Akiva always has Karoo at the front of his mind, and even when he did things that ultimately hurt Karoo, he did them without realizing that they would hurt Karoo. Even when they were at odds, he never treated her in a way that I thought, man, this is gross. I can't believe they're pushing this as romantic, and unfortunately that just happens in so much fiction. They placed their priorities in ways that were super logical. There was never drama just for the sake of drama. They honestly acted in ways that I was like, yes, go save the world first, talk about this later, and that is absolutely how they acted in this trilogy. Their romance was something that really pushed forward the action of this book in a very interesting way, but they put that aside for the greater good, and it's something that I really love because I hate when there are monsters outside of the door and the people are like, but we love each other. No, do that later. I thought the romance was also very interesting here because it starts off looking a little bit insta-lovey in the first book, but then Taylor kind of flips a switch on you and you realize why, and it's actually part of the story and a part of who Karoo is, which was very interesting. There are a lot of tropes that Taylor deals with in the story, and as I said in the review of this, through the sheer will and force of her writing, she makes them her own, and she describes the relationship and the love between these two people very well. As always, let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought about the romantic pairings I talked about. You can also let me know who your #1 romantic pairing in 2015 was. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon. Sign up for a dating site. Maybe use Tinder, like anything. I loved you when you were emotionally unstable might be a nice thing to say to someone, but not so nice as I kissed you when you were emotionally unstable.